Right, this is easily the most insane story in Calvino's collection. Far and away.
You've read all of them?
I've read many of them. I've read through enough of them to know that this one's not to be exceeded. This is the story. You see if you agree with me. That's the end of the story. That's how the story ends. There's no. Calvino titles it "The Palace of the Doomed Queen," but in my house we just call it the Hellbox. Okay. So once upon a time, there was an old woman, and she made her living by spinning. She was very poor. She lived with her 3 grown daughters, and the old woman took ill and died. And on her deathbed, she said to her daughters, "My only regret is that you will live lives of such poverty. So my wish for you is that you'll be able, by your talents and your skills and your wits, to make a better life for yourselves. My only legacy to you is the 3 balls of yarn in the cupboard." And the old woman dies. A few days later, the oldest daughter, Mary, says to the others, "Easter's coming up in a few days, and we have no food for Easter dinner. So I'm going to take my ball of yarn to market, I'm going to sell it, and buy us some food so we can have a nice dinner for Easter." She does this. She gets a good price because it's well-spun yarn. She buys a bottle of wine, a leg of lamb, and a loaf of bread. And as she's walking home, up comes a dog. The dog trips her, breaks the bottle of wine, steals the lamb and the bread, runs away. He's out of sight before Mary can even get up. So she goes home to her sisters and has to tell them the dog stole our Easter dinner. The next day, the second sister, Rose, says to the others, "I'm going to go sell my ball of yarn and buy us some food for Easter dinner. And I'm not going to let that dog steal our food this time." So she goes to market. She gets a good price for her yarn. She buys some giblets, a bottle of wine, and a loaf of bread. She goes home by a different road, but here comes the dog. The dog knocks her down and breaks the bottle of wine, steals the rest of the food, runs away. Rose is quicker on her feet than her sister, and she chases the dog for a while, but the dog is faster and eludes her. So she has to go back home hours later, out of breath, and confess to her sisters they still have no Easter dinner. The third sister, Nina, says, "I'm going to go to market. I'm going to sell my yarn. I'm going to buy us some Easter dinner. And God help that dog if it tries to steal our food this time." So she goes to market, gets the best price yet. She buys provisions of plenty for the dinner. She goes home by yet a third road. And yet, here comes the same dog. It knocks her down and breaks the wine, breaks the bottle of wine, steals the basket of food and runs away, but Nina chases it. And she keeps up with it. She follows it all the way out of town to an abandoned palace. The dog carries the basket through the door of the palace. She says to herself, "Well, this is where all our food has gone. I'm just going to go in there and explain to these people that they owe us 3 Easter dinners." So she walks into the palace as bold as you please. She doesn't find any living soul in the palace. In fact, she finds a dining room table that's set luxuriously for many people. And in the kitchen, she finds the leg of lamb roasting over a fire, the giblets cooking on the stove, 3 loaves of bread in the cupboard. She says to herself, "This is where all our food has gone. If only my sisters were here, I'd sit down to eat right now." So she hears some noise in the street. She sees a wagon going by, and she calls to the boy driving the wagon. She says, "Down the road a couple of miles are my sisters. Tell them that Nina is here at this abandoned palace and the dinner is ready." So a while later, the 2 sisters show up. They look around. They see the dining room table set for many people. They see the food cooking, but no people around, and they're scared. And Nina says, "Forget about it. So let's sit down and eat. If the people didn't want us to eat, they obviously wouldn't have stolen our food and cooked it and left it all ready here. So if they come in, we'll just explain that we're eating our own food that they stole from us. We'll demand an explanation from them." So Nina sits down and starts to eat. The sisters sit down, but they're afraid. They're sort of looking side to side, barely nibbling at the food, because they're afraid any moment a monster might come into the room. There's something mysterious about this palace. So they finish their meal, and they get up, and they're sleepy. So they go upstairs, and they find 3 bedrooms with beds turned down, as nice as you please. Nina says, "I'm going to bed." And they say, "Oh no, let's go back home." Right, the 2 sisters. She says, "Oh, you timid little girls, we are going to stay here. We're comfortable here. There's nothing wrong with this place. I'm going to bed no matter what you 2 do." So she climbs into a bed and goes to sleep. The other two sisters get in the other two beds and go to sleep. So they're sleeping soundly when Nina is woken up in the middle of the night by a voice. The voice says, Nina. She gets up, walks out into the hallway, bold as you please. The voice is coming from downstairs. Nina. She walks downstairs. It's coming, in fact, from the cellar. So she finds the door to the cellar and goes down the stone stairs into the basement. She walks through the cellar until she comes to a bare room with no furniture and just bare stone walls. The only piece of furniture in the room is a giant wooden chest bolted to the floor in the center of the room. And the voice is coming from the chest. Nina, come here. So she walks up and she opens the lid of the chest. And it's a portal to hell. And looking up at her through the flames is a beautiful woman wearing a golden crown. And the woman says, Nina, would you like to be very, very rich? And Nina looks her right back in the eye and says, yes, I would. And the woman says, you're going to have to do some truly horrible things. Nina says, I'm ready. You're going to have to convince your sisters to help you. And Nina says, not a problem. So the woman in the box says, in life, I was the Queen of Spain. And I fell in love with a young man in the local village, and he ruined me, and as a result, I'm in hell. Now, he plans to marry another woman. So I want you to find him and kill him and stuff his body in this box so he can be here with me in hell for all eternity, because that's only fair. And Nina says, okay, how do I do it? So the queen says, you go into one of the upstairs rooms and you'll find in the closet all my dresses and gowns and robes. Pick one that suits you. Then arrange your hair to look just like mine. And go out onto the balcony at the front of the palace at 3 p.m. tomorrow with a book in your hand. The young man will ride by on a horse and he'll ask if he can call on you. Say yes. Serve him coffee, but poison his coffee. And once he's dead, bring him down here and stuff his body into the box. I'll take things from there. And Nina says, done. I'll see you at 3:30. See you at 3:30 tomorrow. So Nina goes upstairs and goes back to bed. In the morning, she explains to her sisters what they're going to do. And the sisters, of course, are terrified, horrified, in fact, I can tell like some of you, by the prospect of this. But Nina goes and finds the closet full of dresses and robes, and she picks a nice green gown that is flattering to her. With combs and pins, she arranges her hair just like she saw the queen's. And she goes out onto the balcony with the book at a little before 3 o'clock. Soon, hoofbeats, and up rides a young man on a white horse. And he is rakishly handsome. Smirks at her. Says, my lady, may I call upon you? She says, please do. So he walks into the palace, and they make some small talk, and she says, why don't we have some coffee? He says, oh, yes, please. So she serves him coffee, he drinks from the poisoned cup, and he falls over dead. Nina stands up, she calls her sisters, and she says, help me carry his body into the basement. And the sisters say, no, we can't, we mustn't, it's terrifying, it's wicked. And Nina says, you listen to me. This is our one chance at wealth and happiness, and you are not going to screw it up. You help me carry this body to the cellar, or I'll kill you and stuff you in the hellbox. So, sobbing quietly, each of the sisters grabs one of the legs of the dead man. Nina gets him under the armpits. They carry him to the stairs. They carry him down the stone stairs into the basement, into the room with the box. Nina opens the lid, and there sits the queen on a throne of flames. And she says, did you bring him? She says, got him right here. Nina stuffs the body in the box head first. The queen reaches up and takes him by the hand. He revives. She sits him on the throne next to her, and she says, welcome, my beloved. Now you will never leave me ever again. She tells Nina the location of her treasure that she's hidden, as it's all yours. The lid of the box slams shut and it locks. Nina revives her two sisters who fainted. They go upstairs. They find the treasure. They use it to fix up the palace where they live. A few years later, the sisters each get married to an excellent young men. Shortly after that, Nina herself gets married, and she lived like a queen for the rest of her days. That's the end of the story. That's how the story ends. There's no Like I said, is the craziest story. This was just the reaction we had to it as well. I said, wait a minute, that's just straight up cold-blooded murder. I will say, Nina is a very bold and unforgettable character.